Hello and welcome to the Mind Body Power Program membership, the Mind Body Power membership recording training today. This is Cynthia Sumner, the owner and founder of Healing Leaf, and I am excited to share this information with you. If you will bear with me, I've lost my voice a little bit, so I will do my best to speak clearly. Of course, I say this every week. I'm excited to share this information with you. I'm going to be talking about the heart and how to strengthen the heart and how we need to focus on the emotional side as well as the physical side. So I'm going to start off by reading a story, and this comes from the book called Dr. Mom's Healthy Living by Sandra K. Livingston, who is a master herbalist and an amazing woman. I've met her and have been able to interact with her, and she is just helping so many people. And she has a story in here by a doctor, he's a heart surgeon, Dr. Willix, who decided he wasn't curing his patients. He was simply prolonging their death. And he shares his story. So I'm going to read it here, and then I will give you some information on how you can move forward and strengthen your heart. Hopefully this will be helpful to many of you, and if you know of someone that is needing this information, feel free to forward this to them or to sign them up for this membership so they can get this kind of information, or you can just share what you learned from it. Okay, so this is Dr. Willix's story. He says, I had to learn about the secret key to good health by going through an experience that quite literally changed my life. I don't want to go through anything like that again, but I'm grateful for the experience. I believe that it helped save my life and the lives of my patients. It prompted me to put down my knife after years of being one of the country's leading cardiac surgeons and take a whole new approach to medicine. That approach was revolutionary when I started it a decade ago. Today, more and more doctors are catching on, but it's going to take a long time for that great ocean liner of traditional medicine to steer back on course. In the meantime, millions of Americans are going to die of cancer, lung disease, and heart disease, when instead they might have lived to a healthy 120 years or more. I was a stressed-out 225-pound heart surgeon with a smoking habit that should have killed me. When I got to medical school, I learned a lot about the sick. In fact, I picked up a prescription for bad health the day I walked through the doors of the University of Missouri, hell-bent on being a success. I worked day and night. I wanted to know everything, and I wanted to know it better than anyone. Then after 4 grueling years of medical school, I got my medical degree and headed for the University of Michigan Medical Center for my residency in surgery. This resident program was well known, prestigious, and tough to get into. Only 24 young doctors were admitted to my class. As it turned out, it was even tougher to stay in the program. As many as 16 of the 24 in my class were asked to leave because they didn't measure up to the program's high standards. That was in the 1960s, and back then traditional medicine was opening up a fantastic, brave new world in surgery. But I didn't want to be just any surgeon. I wanted to be the top gun, a heart surgeon. That's what the big pioneers wanted to be in those days, because for the first time, we were attempting to perform surgery on an open heart. After finishing my residency, I devoted my professional life to this brave new world of open heart surgery. I moved to South Dakota, where I developed the first heart surgery program in the state and became the only board-certified cardiac surgeon in all of South Dakota. I received accolades and awards. I had my own practice. The money was good. In fact, I was getting rich. I had a wife and 2 children. I had a big home, an expensive car, and I had all the things that proved I was a huge success, right? Well, maybe. Meanwhile, my personal life was going down, and so was my health. While I was working as a big shot surgeon, my weight shot up to 225 pounds. I smoked a pack and a half a day. I ate anything and everything I could get my hands on. I'd have 2 or 3 highballs whenever I didn't have patients to care for. I spent almost 24 hours a day indoors working. I had a fluorescent tan. I wasn't enjoying life. I was careening toward an early death. Today I know that somewhere deep inside me the realization was growing what I was doing as a surgeon was not really improving people's health. The truth was that many of my patients were dying, and as were the patients of every other surgeon. But I wasn't quite ready to face that. Like many other cardiac surgeons, I was deep in doctor denial. You ought to understand that it's extremely difficult for a doctor to admit that what he or she is doing isn't really saving lives. Our rigorous years of medical training teach us that we are saving lives. That's what our careers are all about. And we have to believe that going into an operating room, that it's saving lives. So that's what we wanted. But you wouldn't want a surgeon with second thoughts about abilities operating on you, would you? Of course not. I'd probably performed more than 1,000 coronary bypass operations, but I was beginning to find that a great many of my patients were back on the operating table within 3 to 5 years. Many of the others were dead, and even those who got well were never the same again. The sad fact was that in all my years as a doctor, I never saw anyone go through cardiac surgery and come out the same. There are personality changes, memory loss. A transformation happens in the operating room that changes the patient forever. These thoughts must have been running through my head on the day I had the experience that turned my life around. The day began like any other. I woke up from my cot in the hospital locker room that all the doctors used. We kept cots there for the workaholics like me. I woke up, lit a cigarette, found a cup of coffee, and went over the first chart of the morning. Heart attack victim. The patient was a man in his middle 50s. His name sounded familiar, but I didn't think much of it at the time. I looked down the list of risk factors. Overweight, stressful job, workaholic. Of course, now I realize that every one of those risk factors applied to me. At the time, I didn't think about it. I kept reading. After all, my job was to replace a valve in his heart, not internalize the case history. In the operating room, the other doctors and nurses were preparing this guy. They were basically sawing the guy's chest in half. That's what we have to do in open heart surgery. Then they stopped his heart and kept him alive with tubes and wires that ran into the heart-lung machine. When they had done all that, they were ready for me, the big man on campus, the surgeon. I scrubbed, got into my latex gloves, and picked up my scalpel as I had hundreds of times before. As I prepared to replace the valve, and then it happened. It hit me. I knew this man. He'd been on that same table just a few months before, and I thought of all my other heart patients who'd come across my table more than once. They had a lot in common. My heart patients were a lot like me. Almost all my heart patients were over 45. Nearly everyone was a smoker. They were all overweight. Most were classic workaholics. Some drank too much. Most didn't have time for their families. Nearly everyone was unhappy and depressed. They didn't take care of themselves. They didn't enjoy life. They were at high risk for early death. I looked down at that man who was unconscious with all kinds of tubes running in and out of him. His chest was pulled apart. His heart was hooked up to a big machine. His family was hugging and crying in the waiting room, not knowing if they'd ever see him alive again. I couldn't even tell you for sure at that moment that he'd ever go home again, much less stay alive much longer. He was in terrible shape. He was near death as one could be without being 6 feet under. And for the first time at age 34, I realized that I would soon be in that same situation if I didn't do something quickly to change my life. I forced myself to realize what my subconscious already knew. Heart surgery didn't cure my patients. It's just prolonged their deaths. That man had already been on my operating table once, and this time he easily might not take it off alive. I didn't help him get his health back. I just slowed down his death. I knew then that the same slow death awaited me. If I continued to treat my body and my health the way I had been, I'd be flat on my back in the OR, just one more patient who didn't care enough about himself to protect his death. At that moment, it all came together. It clicked. I realized that what I was doing as a doctor really wasn't improving my patients' health. I wasn't telling them how to regain their health. I was trying to fix them after they had been broken. I was like some sort of glorified auto mechanic, except that instead of working on cars, I was working on human bodies. Unfortunately, the body doesn't work the way a car does. It's far more complex. The awful truth was my patients who went through surgery ended up going home, if they were lucky, and resuming the same old bad habits that brought them to my operating room in the first place. I had known this all along, but for some reason, until that moment, it hadn't sunk in. My patients were going back out and doing the very same things that led to their heart disease. What chance did they have to getting healthy? I finished surgery that day, and although I didn't realize at the time, that was the beginning of the end of my career as a surgeon. I was about to hang up my knife for good. That moment in the operating room convinced me that I could no longer, in good conscience, continue to practice medicine the way I had been taught in medical school. I knew I had to change my life and my outlook. I successfully replaced this man's valve, and then I vowed I was going to teach him and myself how to get healthy. I wanted both of us to learn how to enjoy life to the fullest possible extent and to stay healthy at the same time. I didn't want to let heart disease or cancer or lung disease kill either one of us, and I knew I didn't ever want to be on that table in the OR. I went home that day a changed person, but my change was just beginning. I knew there was something I had to find, something inside me that held the answer. In a lot of ways, our grandparents and great-grandparents were far wiser than we are today. They had faith in Mother Nature. They knew there were foods you could eat that were good for you. They knew that spending time in the great outdoors was healthy. What happened to all their good advice? Well, in the 20th century, we doctors got a little arrogant. We thought we could invent pills and surgical procedures that would do a far better job than nature could do. We thought relying on natural cures was old-fashioned. In addition, I think we all had a certain fear that natural cures might put us out of business. I'm the first to say that some surgical procedures and some pills save lives, but there are a lot of surgeries and a lot of prescriptions that are truly unnecessary. In fact, there are some that are downright dangerous. These are things I couldn't have said before I had the experience that I described. It took me some time and a lot of research to see the truth because it went against nearly all my high-tech medical training. The day after I had the experience in that operating room, I started researching the ways other than surgery that might help me keep my heart patients from having to go under the knife. I wanted to find a way to get them back to health. At the same time, I started putting together the results of all this research. I had a group of patients in my care who were on their way to surgery or heart attacks, whichever came first. Each of them had been diagnosed with clogged arteries. Each of them had been told he or she should undergo surgery, and all of them were in pretty rough shape. Some couldn't walk up a flight of stairs without wheezing. Some were smokers. Most had no energy for intimacy. In some cases, the drugs they took made their intimate life impossible. Some were depressed. Several were workaholics. Not one of them was living the life he or she wanted to be living. I vowed to come up with a strategy that would get them and me healthy again. I asked each of my patients to stop smoking and give me 1 year. I told them I thought I could help them keep from having either surgery or heart attacks. And so these patients and I embarked on our campaign to get healthy. There were basically 4 parts to it. The first was information. We set up a system for letting one another know about the results of the latest medical research on the body's ability to heal itself. The second part of our campaign was to put our bodies back to work for us. We started taking walks together. You have to understand that at first, not all my patients could walk very far at all. It was an effort for some of them to walk even 1 block. But after just a few days, every one of them got stronger. Then we moved on to lifting small weights, some of us began riding bicycles again. And this was for the first time since we were teenagers. It was like taking 25 years off our lives. My patients reported they were interested in intimacy again. The third part of our campaign involved changes in the way we looked at food and vitamins, because the foods we eat and the vitamins we give our bodies play an extremely important role in the level of health we enjoy. The fourth part of our campaign was to get rid of some of the stress in our lives. Each of us approached this challenge differently. Some members of the group started going to church. Others began taking time out of each day to meditate. Some just cut back the number of hours they spent at work. We all went through the medical tests designed to determine our state of health. We underwent all of them: treadmill tests, cholesterol tests, blood tests. And sure enough, the medical test proved that what we already suspected. All 7 of us were much healthier than we'd been when we started. After just 1 year of healthier lifestyles, not one of my patients needed surgery, and most have been able to stop taking their expensive prescription drugs. As a result of all the time I spent working with my team of patients, I was inspired to continue on my own health program. My progress came so quickly, and it made me feel so much better about myself that I wanted to step it up a notch. I went running for the first time in about 20 years. Then, with the encouragement of a friend, I entered a 3-mile race. I felt terrible after that first competition because I was still out of shape, but I decided to keep at it. I began jogging on a regular basis. I don't recommend this for everyone because it is so strenuous, but it worked for me. My weight dropped to 165 pounds. I felt incredible. Within 6 months, I entered my first marathon, a distance of 26.2 miles. And finally, in 1984, I fulfilled a dream of competing in the Ironman triathlon in Hawaii. My experience had a dramatic impact on my life. It liberated me from traditional unhealthy ways of thinking. But the bottom line is that it taught me that I have much greater control over my health and my life than I had believed. And I've seen the same transformation in many of my patients. I believe Mother Nature, in her eminent wisdom, provided us with almost everything we need to stay healthy. Of course, if something catastrophic happens, we may still need a hospital. But when it comes to retaining the good health we were born with, Mother Nature has most of the answers. It should go without saying by now, if you are going to work on a serious heart condition, you must be serious about using a good diet, good supplements, and a good exercise program. So that's a pretty amazing transformational story. I just love it because it's a very educated, prestigious man that was able to go back to the strength of his inner self and to what we've been given on this earth to heal. And we really have that strength within us, and we're surrounded by the elements that we need to do it. It starts within our mind and in our heart. We have to believe it and be willing to work for it and know that we have that power. And I want to give a few tips. Of course, the more plant-based food you eat, the better. Green smoothies, salads, steamed veggies. A really good book to read is Fit for Life by Harvey Diamond, he's a medical doctor, went through the same type of experience as this doctor that I just shared his story with. Some supplements that you can take that are extremely beneficial for the heart and you get results right away, for most people do, is hawthorn berry heart syrup. And you can get that in most health food stores. You can order it and get a discount through My Assistant if you order, send your order to the email healingleaforders@gmail.com, or you can get it at Good Earth stores, Whole Food stores. Another one is the blood circulation formula from Dr. Christopher. It's called the Dr. Christopher's Blood Circulation Combination, and that helps clear your arteries, strengthens your veins, strengthens your heart, and is very beneficial. And then also the adrenal formula, and this is to help boost and feed your adrenals because stress has such a huge part on the health of our heart. And so I recommend that. And also meditation is so important, being out in the sun exercising, even if it's just stretching and deep breathing, and then starting to walk and just moving the body. But want to impress upon you the importance of being still and meditating and focus in your mind what you want and start eating the food that supports you. Forgiving others strengthens your body and your mind so you're not holding the stress of negative energy, and just being willing to serve others and forgive. Give your body what it needs and share this information. Know that you have the power within to have a strong heart. It's one of the top killers in America. We need to spread this information. So thank you so much for listening, and I will talk to you next week.